Andrei Sakharov was a brilliant scientist, but also an intelligent peacemaker. He pioneered many huge leaps in nuclear and fundamental physics, along with cosmology and astronomy, and he also pioneered a new age in Russia. Sakharov had been struck by tragedy many times in life, and in spite of all this tragedy he still made the world a much better and safer place. In spite of the fact that he was the creator of the first Soviet H-bomb, he still pushed for nuclear peace. In spite of the fact that he created the largest weapon ever detonated, Sakharov cared about the environmental and political repercussions of his work. Sakharov was truly a great scientist and a great person. All throughout his life, Sakharov enjoyed literature just as much as he loved physics and science, and he especially enjoyed poetry. As a child wandering through all the many gray roads of the only country that he had ever known, one day little Sakharov wondered, for a while, if it was worth going the extra mile, and so with flying colors he made his way through a world of isolation as he made it past school, though he truly devoted a lot of his time to feats that pertained a bit more to the moment. He was a fan of poetry and of writing and all. His interests were not in the big but the small. Studying particle physics with Mr. Igor in charge at the Academy of Science in the USSR. Then seeing as how some professors were purged for their interest in things of the outside world, Sakharov had decided education went on, as the college ran away from the German bombs. So he studied in Asia as the college relocated, as morale in the Union had slowly deflated. As he made his way there, eating food off the floor, he graduated and practically ran out the door. With honors he left Asia in 1942 and put his education to very good use. This is sarcasm, though, because despite his degree, he soon went to work at a bullet factory. However, while there he met the love of his life. Klavdia Vikhareva would soon be his wife. In the department of physics his doctorate was earned. When asked to make a bomb, he grew quite concerned. He denied after several offers on the job, until Mr. Igor Tam from the college went on. Then naive little Sakharov decided that he should enter the workforce in a secret city. Known as the Installation, or technically Sarov, the nuclear research attracted Sakharov. There they were commissioned by the Soviet Union to create an atom bomb running off hydrogen. Though it was no secret to the scientists involved as to the new age of warfare which they had evolved, Andrei Sakharov knew what he was doing was insane, but the war that had just ended was also inhumane. But not all of the research he did there was bad. He proposed the idea of a reactor, tokamak. The bomb, however, had two possible paths, for while both were supported heavily by the math, Sakharov engineered a nuclear pastry design. The competition was Truba, one that was slightly less fine, the former being layered with radioactive hydrogen, the latter a tube and explosives within. While working on this, his director, Igor Tam, asked him to take over the nuclear plans. He made the first bomb complete with warhead and all. He'd be nowhere near it when the missile would fall. Not quite proud of his work, Sakharov was outraged when the Americans made some ridiculous claims. They could detonate bombs that were totally clean. They would leave no more fallout, but were mostly serene. And so Sakharov, in his justified rage, published a work that simply set the stage, showing a landscape of rock and of fiery plains, where a beautiful kingdom of life had once reigned. Sakharov knew that there were effects from his work. He had enough foresight to find the dangers that lurked, with the premise of playing with nuclear matters, for the environment could then be easily shattered. He made one more bomb, though, throughout his last days. The Tsar Bomba was the largest used within our age. Given orders to build something with a much bigger tang, Sakharov's career literally went out with a bang. And so Sakharov felt that he would better fit in a department that was more suited for him. He once again saw, outside the installation, the citizens of Moscow, and a sinking sensation began to fester in him when he saw what they lived in. and vowed to change Russia's conditions within. With the help of his newfound political power, he helped people out with every waking hour. Those who were exiled from the Soviet Union, he helped to end their discrimination. Studying things less explosive, much like astrophysics, he began to become interested in politics, and so Sakharov felt that he would better fit in a department that was more suited for him. He was content with this line of work for a while, but it turned out that physics was just not his style. He was eventually drawn back to helping people, so he denounced Soviet public censorship's evil in a series of papers that eloquently said, "If you continue this, people will end up dead." And so, as it was, shortly after all the noise, his wife died of cancer, leaving him with 3 boys. And now our poor Sakharov was officially banned from military research, the ones he had planned. And so he demurely accepted restrictions, going into theoretical physics to avoid any friction that he might receive from the oppressive rule of the government that had used him as a tool. He soon married a woman in the same committee dedicated to human rights advocacy. However, within his great search for justice, he received some letters that were filled with malice. What he didn't realize was, despite the address, the government sent them to cause him distress. Under the guise of a normal citizen, it was their words that filled up the space that's within. Despite all of this, to his pleasant surprise, he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. However, he could not collect this award, as the government kept him from what he had scored. So his wife went on to collect Sakharov's place, as Sakharov himself saw his own friend's court case. Then the Russians invaded Afghanistan, and the resulting madness struck a nerve with one man. Sakharov published articles that denounced this affair, claiming that the whole ordeal was completely unfair. For this he was exiled to distant Gorky, but that didn't stop his own autobiography. He wrote it 3 times, each one confiscated. By the third it was memorized, at 1,000 pages. Though he hadn't lost contact with everything, his voice was still heard in some select rings. He got out his words through his guarded isolation, and shared with the world hordes of precious information. Meanwhile, back home, the Soviets had a plan. They'd get back at Sakharov for Afghanistan. They claimed that his wife, his dear Yelena Bonner, had been corrupting him with no evidence on her. Then finally, during the Soviets' fall, as Mikhail Gorbachev began to rule them all, it was still a year after before Sakharov came home to a country that he could hardly call his own. He immediately set out in his long-term goal to establish a political party that was whole, not gaping open as if split with an axe, made up of the corruption that was Russia's past. Sadly, however, Sakharov never saw the release of the USSR's iron claws. For just 1 measly month before this great day, Sakharov suffered a heart attack and was taken away, to a land free of all that he had ever fought, leaving behind a legacy that we never forgot. Sakharov died on December 14, 1989, just a month before the Soviet Union yielded to radical Democrats, and just 2 years before the Soviet Union was officially destroyed. Even though Sakharov died before he could see the products of his work, he still contributed to the world in a huge way. The Soviet Union, which had been a major world superpower, had disbanded, largely because of the work of Andrei Sakharov. Sakharov had also some pretty hefty scientific achievements under his belt, like being the creator of the first Soviet H-bomb, and was also the creator of the most powerful bomb ever detonated in the history of the human race. While these are no small feats, Sakharov was not proud of his work. He realized the environmental damage these bombs were doing to the atmosphere. So he risked all of his political power and favor within the Soviet Union to do the right thing, and that is why Andrei Sakharov is famous, not because he made the first or biggest bomb, but because he gave up political power to right the wrong done in Russia.